Welcome back to SicEm365 Radio. Our weekly segment with Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments Brokers, Tom Albers, Brad Wilson, Ben Erlinson, and Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Here we go, 4:18 is the time. Every Tuesday at around 4:20, Mack Rhoades, Director of Athletics, Baylor University, joins us. Last week it was early. Last week was different. This week seems to be, at least right now, a lot of sunshine and a possibility of a game on Saturday with Texas. Mack, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Does it appear as if everything's all clear, also knowing that nothing is ever all clear in this day and age of COVID?
Well, we certainly feel like we're in a better position than we were a week ago. And, I'll speak to the last test, the Sunday test, where we tested all of our football student athletes again and all of our football staff. And that test yielded 0 positives. So, we feel good. We feel like, because of the way we reacted and certainly grateful to our health and wellness staff, the immediacy with the way, in the way we reacted, that we were able to break the chain of transmission. So, feel good about playing this upcoming Saturday.
Was, in the end, the false negative, do you feel like that's the pinpoint, or did you end up, because of Nick Saban's story, that the false positives, of course, people have had that and then they've turned around and then they've taken tests and been negative multiple times. Do you feel like that pretty much is where you could pinpoint where everything went wrong 8 or 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago?
I think that's our best educated guess. And when I say that, I say that's our health and wellness team. That's our doctors. That's, consulting with Dr. Hostler, right? Somehow, some way, we started the chain of transmission, and we believe it started, while we were on the West Virginia trip, and trying to pinpoint it, we haven't been able to do that, right? We're certainly, reviewed all of our protocol, particularly that Friday night in the hotel. Saturday morning, we weren't in the hotel very long because it was a noon Eastern kick, right? So you get to the stadium an hour and a half, 2 hours before. There wasn't a lot of hanging around, et cetera. And again, just all of the precautionary measures that we had in place, the social distancing, the mask wearing, all of that. Feel like staff and student athletes were really compliant. And then, the next place that we really took a look at was, just the locker room situation. And, again, being repetitive, right, visiting locker rooms across the country, they're smaller. The outside area, outside of the locker room was narrow. And so just, reviewing how we handle that situation. And, you have this false sense of security, because you believe you're getting on the plane and everybody's negative, and then you're wearing the N95s and the goggles. And, so, there's probably that false sense of security and maybe you let your guard down just a little bit. Maybe, there's people on the bench, on the sidelines, that during the game that don't have the mask on when they should have the mask on. So those are all of the things. We really picked this thing to pieces and really just reviewed everything.
How does it change what you're going to do? If it's a false negative, the concern I've had is if it's a false negative that can set all this off, well, there's really nothing you can do about that if you have to run that risk again. So you just still have to kind of roll the dice, don't you, Mack?
Yeah, there's still some risk, and we all knew that going into this, right? Nothing was going to be perfect. There was a football student athlete in the Big 12, two different institutions involved in a game. The particular student athlete gets on a bus to go to the game, and obviously getting on the bus tested negative, and then during the game, 24 hours later, starts to feel sick, has some symptoms. They test him during the game, and he's positive, right? And so that's just part of what we're dealing with, and so you do the very best you can to take all of the precautionary measures, and sometimes I think you just you get unlucky, and that's what this felt like.
Mac, how have your expectations changed from just when everything was somewhat normal to where we are right now as far as what you expected to see out of football in this first year under Dave Aranda? And having been so long since we've last seen them play, I mean, what kind of feel do you get for this Saturday as well?
Yeah, candidly, I'm certainly, worried about the upcoming contest just because of the time off, right? The layoff and how do you react to that and lack of activity, and even with the starters, there'll be a handful that won't have a lot of practices under their belt. So you worry about that. But in terms of expectations overall for the season, Craig, I'm not sure they've changed. I still have high expectations. I expect us to go out and, number one, play harder than the opponent. I expect us to be tougher on the field than the opponent. I expect us to execute at a high level, and I expect us to win games. And I would tell you that those are Coach Aranda's expectations. So we're not going to lower them. We may be more difficult to achieve because of some of the things that we face, but not going to let those become excuses. And we're just going to work on playing the best that we can and getting better and understanding that there's 7 games out in front of us. And we have a chance to have a good year.
Mac, with that being said, after the latest delay, the game being pushed back to December, you go down to Austin and you expect to win the game. You go down to Austin after all you've experienced the last couple of weeks and win that game. Would that be almost as emotional as it was when you finally kicked off against Kansas earlier this year after all the delays?
Wow, great question. This will right this moment will be the very first time I've even thought of that, and I would tell you, yeah, it probably will be emotional, right? And again, it'll be emotional because of the opponent. It's a big game for both schools. There's a rivalry. It means a lot to our student athletes. Student athletes on both sides of the ball. A lot of them have grown up together, have played on the same team or competed against each other before they arrived at UT or Baylor. So, probably will be somewhat emotional if we're able to overcome and persevere and walk out of or drive out of Austin with a W.
Mac, have you gotten to talk to the players all that much going through this, and does it kind of give you an idea of how you have to deal with it down the line now that you've really gone through it? At least from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, I think we've got some resilient young men, and they've handled the adversity. There's a true brotherhood. They want to play. They've, again, we're asking 18 to 22-year-olds to, be almost more mature than adults in the way they navigate all of this. And they've been really good. And they were really good during the time off, the stay in place order, and when they got together again on Sunday for practice, there was great energy. There was just a happiness to be back together and to play. And so, I don't know. They may be taking it better than the athletic director is.
Hey, okay,
Great.
sorry, my mic was off there for a second, Max. Sorry about that. How does a trip to Austin versus a trip to Morgantown differ? I would imagine a plane ride is not necessary, but how different is this trip versus what you guys had to do about 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, Craig, I appreciate the question. I think there's a lot of similarities to it. The same precautionary measures. Instead of a plane, we're going to be on a bus. It'll be the same type of, protocols that we had on the plane. Those same protocols will be on the bus, the mask, the goggles, all of those things. So a lot of similarities. We'll probably tweak some things at the hotel in terms of the way we do the meal and just, making sure that maybe less time spent together. And then, really being strategic with the locker room layout and how we handle that and how many in the locker room at a time. And, do we, have some people dress at the hotel, for example, and get on the bus dressed so that, not having to do that in the locker room. And again, just trying to reduce the number and the amount of people at any one time in the locker room. So those are some things that we'll do a little bit differently this time around.
With what the SEC experienced last week, and Nick Saban tests positive, and then starts to take a test after a test after a test, and obviously it turned out to be whatever his positive test was not true. It was false. Do you have that in the Big 12, or is that an SEC thing?
So, the Big 12 does have a policy, and I don't want to mess it up, but it's only if it's a positive antigen test. Okay, so you can do confirmatory testing on a positive antigen. You cannot on a positive PCR. If it's a positive PCR test, then that stands. And you're in isolation for the 10 days. On a positive antigen, right? You can take 24 hours later. You can take a PCR, and if that is a negative, then another 24 hours, another PCR, right? And if you have the two negative PCRs in a row, 24 hours, in between. Then you're out of isolation and you're deemed a negative rather than a positive.
Is the antigen
that's the Big 12? That's the Big 12 policy.
But is the antigen test the one that's taken on Friday, or is that taken during earlier parts of the week? Because if it's on Friday and you're positive, you have no chance of being cleared for a game.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And so right now. Throughout the league, right, the test that's on a Friday is an antigen, and so a lot of conversation about how do we manage, the Sunday test and the Wednesday test. And right now, I'm not going to necessarily speak for everyone, but my best guess is that most people are doing the PCR. Just because it's the gold standard of testing and gives you the most accurate results. So if you're doing PCR Sunday and Wednesday, right, you have a positive, and then you have to live with that positive because you can't test out of it. So is there any thought? Is there any strategy? And I use that word strategy carefully, but is there any strategy to, all of a sudden now, do we change, for instance, the Sunday test from a PCR to an antigen, right? And, you've got to think really carefully about doing that, and make sure that, that's still in the best interest of our student athletes and staff from a health and safety standpoint. So that is a conversation that is going on right now as we speak.
Is it a conversation because it seems like that would be more fair, or is it a conversation because perhaps some are pushing the envelope?
I think both. I think a little bit of both, right? What happened with Coach Saban and the SEC, that was for the world to see and played out. And all of us, human nature, right, want a competitive edge and want to make sure that we're being as aggressive as possible. Other coaches see that. Well, are we doing that? Can we do that? If we can't do it, why can't we do that? Right. So I think it's from that perspective, pushing the envelope, but then I think it's also, hey, at the end of the day too, you don't want to take away an opportunity from somebody that it shouldn't be taken away from. If it's a false positive, right. And now all of a sudden, we're sitting a student athlete out or, staff member. Okay. How fair is that? So, it's a balancing act and you're trying to balance both sides. And again, your foundation is and always will be, health and safety of our student athletes and staff.
Mac, how about your number one ranked women's golf team?
Yeah. How about that? First time in the history of the program and, really proud of Coach Goebel and our young ladies and, just have had a fantastic, fall season and as well as our men's program. And so, both of our golf programs are off to a great start and again, proud of both programs. But, again, we always focus results on the course and the winning piece. And again, so proud of them for that, but more proud of them for how they're doing it and the things that they're doing off of the golf course as a team and as a staff.
I had a question for you, and I know you got to go. Can basketball players not go to class and only do Zoom classes so we can bubble them and bubble wrap them, both men's and women's basketball, for the fall semester?
So can we become the NBA? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Next question.
No. Hey, we'll see you Saturday. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck the rest of the week as you manage this.
All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Mack Rhoades, I want to clarify everything he just said there because it makes sense, but the antigen test in the Big 12 is taken on Friday.